Good evening. I'll now call to order the regular meeting of the Show Low Planning and Zoning Commission for Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. A roll call shows that all commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Bess, who is excused. We'll start with an invocation led by Commissioner John Adams, and then we'll have a Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Wilson. If you'd like to join us, please rise.
Our Father in heaven, we are very grateful to be gathered here this evening and to be able to live in such a special area. We're grateful for the area that we live in, and we pray that that will be with us this day and this night as we go over our community and how it grows and how we should proceed. We pray that Thy Spirit may be here as we go over these issues and be able to discuss these things and be able to have the ability to make sound decisions. And we pray for these things and them in the name of Thy Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on with our agenda, we have no old business tonight, and we do have one item of new business, and that is consideration of approval for conditional use permit applications submitted by SunQuest Financial LLC to allow for a 110-foot monopine cell tower on property located at 591 North Cooley Road, 3980 West Cooley, that being APN 30952-027B. Ms. Eckelcotter.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. SunQuest Financial LLC has submitted a conditional use permit, or CUP, to allow for a 110-foot monopine cell tower located at 591 North Clark Road and 3980 West Clark Road, that being APN 21052-027B. The subject property is considered Tract A of Fairway Park Center, is currently Zone C2, which is general commercial. Per city code, new cell towers require a CUP. The property is 2.9 acres in size and is at approximately 350 feet by 465 feet in the widest parts. It is an unevenly shaped property, which can be accessed off of either North Clark Road or West Cooley. There's a 20-foot wide sewer and utility easement running through the property. The subject is adjacent to commercially zoned property, except along the west and southwest property lines. According to the applicant, the reason for the tower is a gap in coverage in the area. The applicant has stated that the 110-foot height is necessary due to the trees and elevation changes of the surrounding properties. The existing trees in the vicinity of the proposed tower are approximately 60 to 70 feet tall. The applicant is proposing a 110-foot tall monopine tower, which would be approximately 40 feet taller than the surrounding trees. For reference, the two most recently approved towers were 80 feet. City Code Section 15169G 2D1 states, towers must be set back a distance of equal to 125% of the tower from any adjoining lot line, but may be reduced by the Commission if the goals of its ordinance would be better served thereby. Based on this requirement, the setback for a 110-foot tower would be 137.5 feet from all property lines. The applicant has proposed the following setbacks: 93.8 feet from the north, 200.8 feet to the east, 158 feet to the south, and 127.4 feet to the west. Due to the dimensions of the property, it is impossible to place the tower outside of the 200-foot visual corridor protection area and meet the 137.5-foot setbacks from all property lines. Also, City Code Section 15169G2E1 states, separation from residentially zoned property shall be a minimum of 200 feet, but may be reduced by the Commission if the goals of this ordinance would be better served thereby. To meet the 200-foot roadway visual border protection area, the tower will only be set back 124.7 feet from the residentially zoned properties to the west of the subject property. The applicant is requesting that the Planning and Zoning Commission allow a 75.3-foot reduction to the 200-foot setback from a residential zone, which would be 124.7 feet. Also, the applicant is requesting a 43.7-foot reduction of the 137.5 foot setback to the north property line, which would be 93.8 feet. The property was posted and letters were sent to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Staff received a phone call and email from resident identify himself as a representative of the Fairway Park Homeowners Association, HOA. He expressed concerns of visual aesthetics, health effects, and declining property values due to the proposed tower. An email from this individual has been attached for your review. Since preparation of the staff report, staff has received additional numerous phone calls in opposition to this proposed tower. Current zoning of the properties includes to the north, C2 general commercial and C1 neighborhood commercial. To the south, R1-7 single family residential 7,000 square feet and C2. To the east, C1, and to the west, R1-7 single family residential 7,000 square feet. The current land use of the surrounded properties includes to the north, Dollar General, to the south, Fairway Park Center subdivision and Circle K, to the east, vacant commercial, and to the west, Fairway Park Center subdivision. Transmittal memos were sent to all affected agencies. Applicable comments received include the airport manager stated that a 7640 form shall be filed with the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA. The FAA has issued a determination of no hazard to air navigation. Therefore, lighting is not necessary on the tower. Building official states that the monopole cell tower requires a building permit and shall meet all building codes, including footing and wind loads. Public Works has requested that a maintenance plan for the tower be submitted to the city. The property was posted and letters were sent to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Staff received a phone call and email from a resident identify himself as a representative of the Fairway Park HOA, expressing concerns of visual aesthetics, health concerns, property values due to the proposed tower. Since the preparation of the staff report, staff has also received numerous phone calls voicing opposition to the proposed tower. After reviewing the zoning ordinance, standards for review, findings of fact, discussions with the applicant, the Planning and Zoning Commission may approve conditional use permit 60204-232 submitted by Sunquest Financial LLC to allow for a 110-foot monopine cell tower located at 591 North Clark Road, 3980 West Cooley, that being APN 210-52027B, subject to the following conditions. 1. All development shall comply with all federal, state, and local requirements, including Federal Communications Commission, FCC, FAA, and building permit requirements. The antenna and supporting structure shall not exceed 110 feet. 3. The tower shall be in substantial conformance to the submitted site plan and determination of no hazard to air navigation. No further height extensions are allowed unless approved through future conditional use permits. And a maintenance plan for the tower shall be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department. Or the Commission may deny conditional use permit 60204-232 submitted by Sunquest Financial for a 110-foot monopine cell tower located at 591 North Clark Road, 3980 West Cooley, that being APN 309-52027B, and stating the reason or reasons why. Staff is as well as the applicant is available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Steckelcotter. I just wanted to clarify one thing when I read in the new business. This property does have 2 addresses.
Correct.
I stated it incorrectly as it was written, but Ms. Steckelcotter did state the 2 correct addresses. It's 591 North Clark Road or 3980 West Cooley Road, just for clarification. Do we have questions for staff on this item? Commissioner Josh Adams.
Yeah, just for clarification, so really what we're here to discuss is this tower is not in compliance with city code section, and we're basically here to make an exception as to whether or not we want to do that. Is that essentially what we're saying?
So it is the commission is allowed to allow reductions to the 125% setback as well as the 200-foot setback from residential zones. So it is permitted per code, but it would have to be done through the commission here.
Okay. And so the height itself isn't really an issue. It's the height in relationship to the residential property. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then finally, I was wondering if you can maybe expound a little bit on the point of the setback and why we have that in the city code section, if maybe you could expound on that a little
Sure.
bit.
It's my understanding that as far as the 125-foot, that if it were to fall down, that it would remain on the property, so it wouldn't affect other property should it fall down.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for staff?
For the applicant, not staff.
I just want to clarify too, beyond the setback issue, any tower requires a conditional use permit, which is another reason why we're here tonight.
That is correct.
I do.
Commissioner Wilson?
You mentioned that numerous phone calls came in regarding this. How many is numerous? Is it more than 10? More than that,
I think Justin received the majority of them, so he could probably give you a better number.
So we do send out the letters, we do post the property. By virtue of my position at the city, my name and my phone number are the ones that are put both on those letters and on the posting. I did receive 2 phone calls from the same individual. That's who sent the email. Also, I was out of the office Friday afternoon as well as yesterday. And in that time, I received 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 different voicemails on these, as well as another phone call this afternoon. So between the 2 different groups, I received about 10. That would be in addition to any other phone calls that might have been received by Ms. Vector or Ms. Haynes.
And I think we each received, Linda and I each also received a phone call as well.
Okay. And then I do have a couple more, sorry. How many properties, residential properties, are within, I guess, that 124.7 feet? How many are actually affected by that
Sure.
reduction?
So I'm sorry, I didn't count exactly all of the properties, which I can do real quick. I just know that as far as when we set out notices to everybody within 300 feet, it was about 42 properties were within 300 feet. So probably about 6 are actually immediately adjacent to that.
And then do we know if those residents in those 6, I know one of them's probably, no, okay, those residents in the 6, if they're full-time residents or seasonal residents?
I'm
we know
not
anything
sure,
about
and I
that?
don't know if they indicated that, Justin. The person that I spoke to just said that they were a citizen, so didn't mention whether they were full-time or part-time resident.
Okay. Is there any provision in here that prohibits, if this tower is allowed to go in, them from extending the tower in the future?
So
I may have missed it.
yeah, so it's in the staff recommendation. I think it was number 3 or 4 that said if they wanted to extend it past the 110 foot, they would have to come back to the commission for an additional CUP.
So they would have to come back to get permission to extend it. So there's
is
a
correct.
possibility it could be extended.
Could be.
Okay. I think that's all I have. Yeah.
Any other questions for staff? Any questions for the applicant? I think we have at least one question for the applicant. So is there a representative for the applicant here? If you'd please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Nancy Guerrera, Post Office Box 737 in Queen Creek.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. My question is in the years I've been on P&Z and planning zoning, there's been several cell towers we've approved, and they've all been, I think, at the 80 feet that we've all approved over the years, and they've worked good. So why the extra height if that's the case?
RF engineers stated that they needed their antenna center line about 30 feet above the top of the tree line. On the survey that we supplied in the drawings, it shows that the immediate trees surrounding the proposed site are 72, 78, and 82 feet tall. So there are some really tall ones right around it. I know that Justin asked, can we trim some of them? I'm not sure the neighbors want them trimmed because right now I know that aesthetics were part of their concern. They didn't want to really stare at it. So how do we work around that a little bit? They are trying to offset 3 different towers in 3 different elevations to the north, to the southeast, and to the southwest.
So it has to be 110 feet.
The 110 feet is the top of the pine needles. The actual tower itself is 100 feet. And then the antenna center line is right directly in line with where the top of the tower is.
Vice Chair.
So you're putting this tower in for what reason? What are you alleviating, or why do they need to add that?
It's not just phone call volume, it's data capacity. There is a lack of data capacity when you're driving, looking at your GPS, whatever that is. Like today I experienced it on my way here where my GPS stopped and please wait a minute is what it says to me because I lost signal. So that in itself is part of the reason why, and offloading the towers that are already in existence, that part is a big part because they're getting overloaded. Some of them are overloaded, and that's part of the problem. The more people that are on their phones and use their phones, because pretty much everyone has one, the less capacity there is available.
Commissioner Roberts.
There is a proposed view or anticipated view in the illustrations. My question would be, how accurate do we think that proposed view would be? Because the way it shows, it looks fairly compatible with the trees that are there. Is that a realistic?
Yes, we made a point of they have me working most of their pine sites in different areas right now because I look at what's in the area and how thick are the tree branches and all of that. And I put that, and that's something that we can do here is put the stipulation of branches per foot, which fills that in and makes it less visible. Part of the design proposed puts those antenna socks that have pine needles on them to help hide those antennas a little bit better. I don't know if I put in let me double check my narrative, but I thought I put an example of one that we recently built that shows what it looks like with those on there.
On your screen, you might see.
You should be able to see it on yours.
Look right down in the
Just
screen
down below.
Oh, that's very similar, but basically what their viewpoint is to try to put a minimum of 2.5 branches per foot. That fills in that space. It helps alleviate some of the concerns of what you're staring at. They've seen the good and the bad trees, and they've worked towards working with vendors that do a better job of concealing what they're doing.
Vice Chair.
And then you're not going into the area and cutting trees out. You're leaving the trees that are there.
Correct.
So you're not clear cutting it or,
Right.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Wilson.
Being that it's 110 feet, all said and done, is there lighting that is going to be on this tower?
No.
And then what is the radius, I guess? So if I'm driving by the Circle K that's right here in town in the Deuce, am I hitting that tower? Am I hitting a different tower? Or do you know?
In one of the, thank you, those are it. with the site, you can see where the red is, that's the area that it fills in for coverage. You can see that there's the green and the blue areas outside of that. Those are the areas with less service and less capacity.
Okay, were there any other more remote areas pursued versus this one right in town?
We looked at several of the properties along the 260, and the goal is to fill in that area along the 260, give all the residents the service that they want, even though they don't want to see it, and to allow the traffic coming through town, which happens all year round because you have such a lovely area, right? You have people visiting all the time. Well, that takes away from the existing towers. So the idea is to fill in that area and help relieve you see the towers to the north, the southeast, and you can't see the one to the southwest because it's far enough away that that one is not going to be able to serve, but it will serve the highway, it will serve the residences and the commercial businesses. We tried some of the other commercial businesses along 260 between Deuce Club and where it is now. And if it's too far south, it doesn't meet the objectives of offloading those towers. And the majority of the properties right in there are very thin and long and not so much wide. And meeting that 200-foot setback was our biggest dilemma.
Okay.
In finding a property that would work with that.
All right, and I promise I only have a few more questions. Any chance this tower being 110 feet is going to be affected by storms or draw lightning because it's so high up? Or
They do put a lightning rod right in the top tree branches it helps offset if it does get struck. There's a ground ring around it that pulls it away from it. Wind does happen. It blows it around. Sometimes you'll see where it's doing a lot of this, but they're structurally made to withstand the winds for the area. So they will meet the building codes and meet those wind standards. They design them for each different city based on their code requirements.
okay. And then do you have a lot of experience with putting cell towers in residential areas? And have you ever had to extend those towers for future growth?
No, the idea is, I think what we found is that if, in fact, we want a second carrier or a third carrier to come into the area, they work with the neighbors more on what can we do? Do we trim back the trees that are existing so that we can allow that vision to the other cell towers? Or what? Typically, I have not seen them extend except in the major metropolitan cities, but now they are not so big into the extension. They're more about bringing it closer and being able to see the different towers.
Okay, and one last question. Very good. So this tower being the height it is and stuff, is it bigger and better than towers out there? I mean, I noticed that somewhere in this packet, it mentioned that possibly letting other carriers use the tower.
That is the goal, so that there's not multiple towers.
Okay, so is it bigger than and better than what regular towers?
They would
smaller towers
structurally
are?
make it co-locatable. That's part of, I believe, the stipulations in the code anyways, is it really needs to be able to be co-locatable so that you don't have multiple towers in the areas.
Well, I know that you said it's to improve communication, and I thank you for that. I mean, could you go by the Pines condos? Because that's really bad. But
there are actually some more that they're looking at, but in different areas.
Are you also, if you allow other carriers, is Verizon, I believe this is Verizon, also paid to allow those carriers to use the cell tower?
Only for their tower area on the tower, but the landowner would get any ground rent.
Okay, that's all the questions I have, believe it or not.
Commissioner Roberts.
I just have one question. It's actually probably one I should have asked staff, and that is, what is our current count or census population right now for permanent residents up here? roughly?
Am I being put on the spot?
I could do a shameless plug for everybody, respond to the census by September 30th so we can have an accurate number. 2010, the census was 10,660 is what they determined our resident count was, year-round resident count. We have had numerous contentions for the last 10 years that that number was an undercount, that it did not accurately include all of the residents that we actually have here in Show Low. Every year beyond that, so from 2011, 2012, all the way through, the state does an estimate based on the number of building permits and how many people they think you're going to have per home. And I mean, they do all sorts of numbers and different things. Over the last 10 years, they approximate that we've grown by about 1,000 people. So as of 2019, the official estimate was 11,700. Again, we think that's an undercount, but that's the number, the official number for year-round residents at this point.
And do we have an estimate, just an estimate, of what our influx is during our seasonal visitors time here?
We don't really have a decent estimate. We know it's a lot. From a non-technical standpoint, we know that we have quite a few seasonal, we have quite a few weekend. Just don't go try to buy a hot dog bun on the weekend and you know how it is. So, but no, we don't have a number that we can point to and say, this is how much our population increases on an average weekend during the summer.
Vice Chair. And then-
Actually, I can share a number
Okay.
because of what I do. So podcasts is what I do. So I get downloads of podcasts. We get weekends where I get 40,000 downloads in the area for a weekend. So that obviously includes locals, but we don't have that many people. So they're coming out of the valley and out of Tucson.
So a fair estimate of the people that might be served by the increase in the abilities from this tower, let's say if we cut that number in half, would be somewhere around 20,000 people that might transverse through that area or close to it.
Do you get overages or disconnection notice, or do you have numbers that you can share?
What I've experienced in areas such as this or Parker, for instance, the fire chief in Parker keeps a pretty strong number on how many people visit their area. For them, it's the lake. For you, it's the campground. So for them, when they have people out at the lake, they go from a 3,579 count permanent residents to over 50,000 people during the busy month. So if you look at all the people going camping, you're accounting for a whole lot of people that just the same way they do. There's many different campgrounds around here and hotels and plenty of things to do up here. And the reason people come here is your amazing weather. So I love the weather. I just can't live up here right now. So.
Thank you for your responses.
Commissioner Wilson.
Yeah, and I apologize. I actually have a question for staff. Is there any data that having a cell tower in a residential area, and now we're talking one that's 125 feet away from these homes, that would bring down their property value? Decrease their property value having a tower so close? Do we know?
I'm not aware of any studies that would say it does. I'm not aware of any studies that say that it doesn't. I've got an individual I know who sells vehicles, and his saying is there's a buyer for every seat. Whether that impacts the property values having one of these, I can't tell you one way or the other. I believe you would have people in this room today that would tell you that their concern is that it would. That was some of the concerns communicated to me over the phone calls that I had received.
Thank you.
If I may on that, I may have an answer for you. So the research that's been done on this and has been published in the Wall Street Journal, is the fastest type of high-speed internet available, whether it's on your phone or in your home, can increase the value of your home $5,400. About as much as a fireplace or adding the value of a new bathroom. On that, they have found that the cellular service near the home is of high importance to 76% of your home buyers, and that was as of 2018.
Thank you.
I have a question for you too. I used to live in that area. We recently sold a home over in Country Club Manor, so I understand that there's an issue in that area for cell phone coverage, especially in Dollar General. If you have a Verizon phone, it doesn't work inside that store. And I can see that it's going to also cover other parts of Show Low. So my question is the lack of capacity or the overload in capacity something that your engineers are seeing, or is this something that customers are calling saying they're having problems at different times of the year? Is this a customer-driven issue or an internally driven issue?
It is actually both. So they get a lot of complaints about the fact that their call drops, or their GPS quits working while they're driving. They also get a lot of technical reports from their existing towers telling them when their tower is failing at giving the capacity that it needs. So it comes from both sides.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? No. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So at this time, is there any member of the public who'd like to address the commission on this issue? Sir, go ahead and come forward if you would please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Burl Cooper. I live at 4401 West Rogers Drive in Fairway Park. I'm the current president of the HOA Fairway Park. And since I was notified and saw the notice of this, I've talked to a number of people, some of which are here tonight, and have a lot of people that are opposed to this. I don't know anybody that's for it, but the reason is we've got everything from health issues to property values to I don't know whether it's actually needed. I use Verizon. It's the only one up here that works that I've had experience with, and I've never had a GPS fail or not be able to get out. I don't see the problems that she's had. I'm not opposed to having a new cell phone tower. I just don't want it in my backyard. We have Kevin back here in the back. He's the one that called Justin, and he's got a list of other locations that might be just as well covering and without interfering with anybody out towards Joe Tank Road and things like that. And the young lady's over here, she's got some health concerns, and I'm going to let them speak for you to them instead of just me hogging the thing, unless you have questions.
Doesn't look like it at this time. Thank you.
Kevin?
If you could also state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Lowry. I live at 680 North 43rd Drive in Show Low in Fairway Park. Thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for hearing our side. So I would like to propose that we decline the conditional use proposal because they are requesting that we reduce the 200-foot regulation from a residence. So we already have a code that protects residents. So I first believe that we should decline because of the other three reasons: that we're concerned about it being unsightly, that we're concerned about the health concerns, and also that we're concerned that it will reduce our property values. So in addition, though, they're saying that it doesn't even meet code. So because of that reason, rather than in addition asking them to place the tower here, they're also asking us to reduce the code because it doesn't meet the standard of 200 feet from a resident. There's a lady who just moved in there that I spoke to, and now she's going to live almost directly 125 feet from a cell phone tower. And, you know, I'm just concerned about all the people that moved there, loved this wonderful neighborhood because they can walk, they can grow their flowers in their gardens. This is where we live. And so as a result, we've provided a list, and I would like to share that with you tonight, of 10 other proposed sites that are within 5 miles of the current facility, of the current location. So these 10 places that I've researched, about 6 or 7 of them are commercial. They're already zoned commercial. So there are other options. So rather than reducing our current code requirement by 75 feet, why don't we uphold that? I believe that there was some wisdom that was presented when they had the requirement of 200 feet. So rather than change that wisdom, I think we should follow it for the community's sake and for those residents who live within 300 feet of the cell phone tower. So if I might, I just would like to share this with you. Would that be okay? There's a list of 200 or a list of 10 other locations that also might be suitable. As we recognize in the modern world, people want Wi-Fi. That's fine. We just perhaps in another location. So we provided and researched 10 other locations, about 6 or 7 of them of which are commercial. Thank you very much.
Chairman,
Yes.
before he leaves,
Sure. Kevin, would you come back to the podium? We have a question for you.
can we put up this map to where we can see where his house is and where the other gentleman's house was? If you can, I don't know if you can point that out, or he would have to come point that out.
The subject property map.
I am 0.3 miles as a crow flies from the potential.
I think it's this one
Proposed
right
place.
here.
One more back.
No, keep going.
Yeah, go forward one more. There you go. There you go. There you go.
So Kevin, if you look down on your screen, you can see the subject properties in gray.
Mhm.
Could you describe where yours is? And you should be able to use the mouse
Oh, sure.
there and actually kind of show your parcel or lot.
Right here. Oops.
Yep, just click. Don't click.
Don't click
Don't
it.
click. Just point.
Now what do I do? Okay.
Yeah, just
So
use the
I
pointer.
live 0.3 miles as a crow flies approximately
Alright.
from where the cell phone tower would be. There are individuals that live right here. So that's how close they would be. And I think they would have to look at a 110-foot monstrosity on a morning basis, daily basis for the rest of their lives.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask one question of the applicant, please?
Sure.
In the information that we received from the applicant, I'm sorry, not from you, from the applicant, their engineer has identified that they have looked at all of these other locations, or many of these other, perhaps not these specific ones, but that they felt that due to the geometry of the land and the landscape and the trees and everything involved, that out of all the areas that they looked at, that this was the only one that would work satisfactorily. If we were to take each one of these, I don't know how long it would take to study them, but there's a possibility, and I don't know, perhaps the applicant answer that, but they may have already looked at some of these and said that technically, technology-wise, that they wouldn't work. So do you know for a fact if any of these other properties might be feasible technology-wise?
Well, that's their opinion that they would work. The question is, to what degree would they work? I think things work to a degree at this time. It's possible that things might even work better if you found a site which was at higher ground, for example, near Joe Tank Road or Burton Road, which is just down the highway 260. There's a place where there's a commercial for sale by owner. It's number 8 on your list on Chamberlain Way, which is literally within 2 miles or so, maybe 3, at a higher elevation. So, and I don't know if they've looked at that lot. It was something I had to drive by and find the sign and get the phone number, but it is zoned commercial. So I would propose that instead of, that we at least look, that we take some time to research. Perhaps there's other opportunities. I think we provided sufficient evidence that tonight we could decline the proposal because we don't want to have to change our 200-foot standard that we have in our code that I believe is there for a good reason. But I do believe that we've presented other options that would adequately, the question is to what degree technologically, obviously I'm not an engineer, but I do believe that there may be other adequate options.
Thank you.
Is that a question that you do want to direct to the applicant to see if they've looked at other properties?
That would be good if we could do that.
Want to wait until you've, or
I apologize for being out of order on that.
Could we maybe finish with the public and then address that again? Okay. Are there any other members of the public that'd like to address the commission? If you could state your name and address for the record, please. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm Sandy Goodrich, and I live at 601 43rd Avenue, which is actually closer to the cell tower potential than his property is. I am an RN, and my issue are health issues, and I've done my research online. A study performed by doctors in German city of Nyala monitored 1,000 residents who lived in the area around 2 cell towers for 10 years. During the 5 last years of the study, they found that those living within 400 meters of either tower had a newly diagnosed cancer rate 3 times higher than those who lived further away. So that's one issue. The other issue is the microwaves from cell phone towers can interfere with your body's own EMFs, causing a variety of potential health problems, including headaches, memory loss, cardiovascular stress, low sperm count, birth defects, and cancer. So I propose that you do not let them build this in a residential area. Find a non-residential area because there are severe health risks. And we don't even know, is it a 5G tower? Good, because that isn't actually a military weaponized EMF system. So that is my concern, is the health. Property values too, I just bought in the area. And my sister lives where do you live?
My name is Christine Brady. I live at 820 North 43rd Drive there in Fairway Park 2. And I have the same concerns that Sandy has. And I agree with Mr. Kevin that if we had rules for planning and stuff, why are we going to do a variance on it and put it in a neighborhood? It's a really unique, small neighborhood. There was a mention about campgrounds, and when you brought up the circle for the area, it didn't even look to me like an enclosed full hollow campground. And that's the only campground that I know of that's that close to Fairway Park, and it was outside that circle for this tower. I don't know how far that tower's supposed to radiate out, but that red circle, it didn't look like it went that far. It looked like it pretty much encompassed Torion and Fairway Park and not much more. Maybe that neighborhood across the way.
And also, I have Verizon too, and I have never had any problems with my Verizon phone in this whole area.
I have Verizon and I have Sparklight, and I've never had a problem in my house at all.
So that just want to bring that to your attention, the health issues involved. They are a high concern for me, especially as an RN. Thank you for your time. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. So maybe in the interest of time, I've heard that there's a few concerns. One would be that it is asking the city to change some of the current existing code for setbacks. That's one of the concerns that we've heard expressed to us. We've had some concerns expressed to us about property values and also some health concerns. Just to kind of look at the audience, do you guys agree with all those concerns? If you could just maybe signify that you do have those concerns. Okay. Is there anyone else that has maybe a different concern that hasn't been voiced tonight? Would you be willing to share that with us tonight? Come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Susan Wagley, and I live at 400 North 40th Circle, which is not very far from where that tower is going to be. Where they're wanting to put that, and she said that they wouldn't cut down any trees or anything. Well, in that area, it's like a little swamp there when we have wet weather. So in order for them to be able to put in a decent tower, they're going to have to clear away some of that and put a good base on that. And so with them saying they aren't going to cut any trees down and stuff, I find that very hard to believe. So,
Your concern is that they're going to have to maybe make some changes to the property to just get it suitable for building. And you're concerned about those changes in general?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we didn't really get a real true answer when she said if we were to make the tower taller or not. I would hope that they wouldn't, but I don't, like with the health thing. I've had breast cancer. I used to put my cell phone right there all the time when I was at work. And I got triple negative cancer from that. And that's, I feel that's how I had got it. And now with the tower there and stuff, I don't like that either. So it really is stressing me out. Yeah, that's about it, I guess. But I just feel that it isn't going to be that easy just to put a tower in there when it's a regular slough down there when it rains. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns. And sir, did you indicate you had another concern that wasn't stated?
Hi, my name's Kurt Furno, 1060 North 47th Drive in Fairway Park. I just can't understand with all the open state private land that there isn't another location, especially you go down Joe Tank Road, it's either got to be state or federal land there. And it's high. It's a high area. And if this tower is built in that location, that means nothing else can be built on that property, correct? You mean you can't put a, let's say, something upgraded maybe from a Dollar General, but there's...
So this is the property that we're talking about. The location of the proposed tower, if I can get my mouse to show up here.
I'm very familiar with that. Like I say, I go by it every day.
Right, I'm trying to show it here on the overhead, but for some reason my mouse isn't working. Can I borrow? Eric, is yours good?
It's not working either.
Okay. Oh, there you are. I think I saw it.
Mine's not.
I saw somebody flit across the screen there.
That would be
Okay. There we go. So the approximate location is proposed to be right around in here, give or take. You can see the remainder of the property is still vacant. The location of the tower here would not preclude development of the rest of the property. Obviously, they'd have to take that into account if they were adding buildings or anything like that. But there is a large portion of the property that still remains undeveloped that would be available for development in the future.
Yeah, I'd like to see some development there other than what it is. But the health concern and also what can be built there and who would want to build there was my question. And yeah, I've walked Joe Tank Road a lot. It's high. It's just, like I say, it's hard for me to believe that there's not another location. The one thing the only positive takeaway I have from this is it looks to me like it was a large pine tree. Every time I come into Show Low from Fairway Park, what do I see at NPC? Some ugly tower. Who authorized that? I know it's probably none of you here, but if I'm going to see something, a tower, I'd rather know it's a tower only because I have inside knowledge that it's not a pine tree. But that's the ugliest thing you can think of coming in from Fairway Park. You see this stupid looking tower, an NPC. That's the only positive thing I have from this request is it's going to look like a pine. But the rest of the things I've got written down here, most of you, especially Dawn, has commented on. She's taken my
Sorry.
forward away. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please come forward.
Two more things were just raised back there. One of them was about the safety. Obviously, there's going to be a fence around this, but we've got a lot more children, teenagers, and young adults moving into the area. I'm concerned they're going to go over that fence and get hurt. I'd like to make sure that that's going to be taken care of. And the other one just slipped my mind. Oh, I know what it was. The nobody's talked about the money. Are they buying this land? Are they leasing it? And, excuse me. Are they buying it? Are they leasing it? And follow the money. Is this money driven? Are they buying or renting or leasing this spot because of the money, as opposed to the other places that they looked at because they're higher priced? I think that should be a good question we should ask the applicants. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other questions or comments? You could please come forward and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Sharon Fox. I live at 4380 West Adair Drive in Fairway Park. I am concerned with the tower for a couple of reasons. Fairway Park used to have the reputation that there wasn't hardly anybody who stayed there when the weather got cold. That is absolutely not true now. We have less people living in the park that are only seasonal. Those that ski are the ones who live behind us in Torreon. This is a very nice community. It is people working with other people. They're helping out, they're friendly. People walk in there. These things should not be put in jeopardy or cause extra concern. And it is not like it was when I first moved in, that it was 55 years old and older. We have every age group in there that there is. We have young people with families. We have lots of kids who love to use their skateboards on the street. I think the health and security of all of these things are very important and need to be taken seriously. Everybody is taking care of their yards. It's a nice looking place to live. And I've lived there nearly 18 years. I like it. I really don't want to harm it. I live next door. My lot's next door to Kevin's. We've been working on bringing bees and butterflies back because it's healthy for trees. I have fruit trees in my backyard. It isn't that I don't want change. And do I want Wi-Fi? Yeah. I have a little old flip phone because it's not something that I use like the rest of the world does. I would like you to take into consideration for your choices that this is a viable, nice community that has all age groups. We don't have that many empty houses where the people have gone down the mountain back to their wonderful heat. I thank you, and I hope that you will consider this. This is a very nice community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any different concerns that we haven't heard from the audience tonight? If you could please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
I'm Christina Cooper, and I live at 4401 West Rogers Drive. And my concern is safety for teenagers and kids that are looking for something to do. And I've been wondering if this tower is going to be fenced off. Is it something that the kids can get into? Will it put off anything that could shock them electrically? Does anybody know that, if it's like electrically powered? Is it?
It is. They're safe. They're rather safe. They have safety as part of their protocol.
Okay, so they're safe. They can't get electrocuted or
No.
anything like
You've
that.
got probably multiple other areas where you've got ground-based electrical boxes that they get electrocuted on before they get it.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I know how to use my phone, but I don't know those those
They're
details.
very conscious of protecting their investment, so they don't want to
But I
endanger
know
that.
kids are always looking for something to do. And I agree with all the other commentators and their comments, and do enjoy living in Fairway Park. Like to keep it nice. Thank you.
And just to kind of recap the concerns, we have visual concerns as far as what this tower will do, health concerns, safety concerns, impacts to property value, and the fact that maybe other locations weren't explored. Am I missing anything as far as concerns? There's someone that'd like to share a concern that we haven't addressed?
Well, the village ground
Good.
doesn't look like.
Okay, so we also have, so to clarify your question, the map that was shown that's listed here, if you look over at the screens, they'll pop up here in just a second. Everything in red would be coverage, not just what's inside the circle.
Oh, okay.
It would cover much of Show Low to the east.
So,
could you come forward? Could you come forward, sir?
She didn't, What's the circle?
Maybe it's it.
yeah.
What does the circle, the black circle, what does it recommend? What does it represent?
So cellular towers is the name.
Yeah, what is the circle?
So it represents a cell. So cells are part of a lot of, so think of a honeycomb and how they all set next to each other. So that tower, that's its main impact area, but it's allowing handoff between other towers to give it the ability to offset the load. It's sort of like another zone in the area. The more zones they add to an area, the more load that can be spread across those. So one tower can communicate. So you could be connected to this tower over here.
Understand that.
It can communicate over to this tower
Yes.
here, and it can take some of the load.
Right, understand that. I'm trying to figure out what the black circle actually means. Since the tower's here, what's the circle itself mean? You said the red indicates.
Yeah, she can answer
coverage.
that specific.
The black circle is to make it easier to see
Oh,
where.
it's a visual thing then.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do. What I'd like to see is the actual coverage that is there now without this cell tower. Is it going to be the same? How much more coverage does it give?
If you would either look down or to one of the monitors. So currently, if you look at the coverage area, there's blue and green areas, which are low coverage. But then if we put the tower in, you can see that it changes to more red in that area to increase the coverage and capacity.
I think that's a good deal. I just think it should be like Kurt said, out on Joe Tank Road someplace, you get much higher. And I don't know if that's still within the city limits, but I think that's a very viable thing for them to look at. I'm totally against all this.
I think it'll address that. I have a question for her.
The applicant?
Yeah.
Or for the...
Well, if it would be for the applicant.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments from the public so we can come back to the applicant and maybe ask some of the questions that were, or to clarify some things that you had questions about? Go ahead and come forward, please. You can state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm not much of a speaker, but my name is Betty Cash. I live at 521 North 41st Avenue. I'm that little brown house that has a fence butting up to where this thing is going to be put in. I just bought the home in March this year. I intended to live there until I died, but I can't see myself sitting on my deck looking at this thing. What I do currently, I sit back there with a cup of coffee and I look at the birds and I watch the chip. But I can't see myself being able to do that. I'm just one person, but I was there first, and I shouldn't have to live with this thing in my back door. And that's what it is, literally. Open my back door, and that's where it's going to be. That's all I can say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we had one more question or concern that hasn't been mentioned yet. Sir, if you could come forward and state your name and address for the record.
My name is Al Hines. I live at 4280 West Burke. Lived in Fairway Park for 20 years. And looking at the red map, you know, the area it's covering, I'm concerned about how much of other locations are being covered. Like how much of Torreon is going to be covered by this? Because they say they don't get the GPS. I've never had a problem with my GPS or my Verizon phone. So is this something that says, well, we've got this area over here, so let's cover that area by putting the tower in Fairway Park instead of putting the tower maybe in Torreon or a higher mountain over there? And like Kevin was saying, all the different locations. Why did they pick one right in the middle of town to cover a different area, other areas? So I don't know what they're looking at, but it looked to me like they thought, well, this is a good spot to put it because we can cover more exclusive areas around it. So that's my concern.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for your comments. Okay, and I think we had some questions from the commission for the applicant to clarify things or for staff.
I have one for staff.
Okay.
I do for staff.
We have a couple for staff. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you. Justin, could you show me the picture again where that tower is going to be on that property and how close it is to those homes? You kind of mentioned it, and I wanted to get that clarified a little bit.
Again, roughly speaking, the proposed tower location is in this area on the map, basically under where that C2 designation is. These lots directly to the west, which you see a number of 561, that would be the address, 541, 521, and 501. Those are all residential lots. Currently, we have one home on that lot, and I believe that was Miss Cash. I think she represented that property.
So how close to those property lines? How close is this tower? I know you mentioned all those earlier, but I'm trying to get that.
124.7.
So yeah, according
on the back one to those homes, 124.
According to that it's also by the app.
Okay. Thank you.
And the vice chair, you had a question.
And that
for
would
staff?
be, and it's 250 is what code?
So
200?
the way our city code is written, and there's been some discussion about why this property, the city code will tell you that you cannot put a tower on a residentially zoned piece of property. It has to be a commercially zoned piece of property. And when you look at our zoning map for the city of Show Low, primarily all of our commercial, it parallels right along the highways. And in a lot of cases, they're not very deep. In fact, when our original zoning was done, we essentially went from the edge of the highway, we measured back 200 feet, and that was the extent of what the commercial zoning is.
Yeah.
From a practical standpoint, it does make it difficult when you're looking to locate a cell phone tower, because our code, while it gives the commission the ability to reduce certain setbacks, it does not give the commission the ability to reduce the visual corridor setback from the highway. So from the highway, per code, number one, you got to be on a commercially zoned piece of property. Secondly, you have to be at least 200 feet back. Then in addition to that, you have two other setbacks which come into play. One is what we refer to as a fall zone setback. And a question was asked about that earlier. We say by code that your tower needs to be 125% of the height away from the property line. So you've already had to meet the 200 feet away from the road. Now you have to meet 125% of the height away from a side or back property line for a fall zone. So let's say a 100-foot tower, you would need to be 125 feet away from your neighbor to the north, to the south, to the back. That setback can be reduced if the commission feels that the goals of the ordinance would be better served.
So we're talking about a 0.4 foot reduction to the, I'm just going to say to the left, and then a lot more to
The second setback is a setback to residentially zoned properties. And that was referred to by Mr. Lowry earlier in his comment. We have a 200-foot buffer from residentially zoned properties. In this case, they're proposing 124.7 feet from residentially zoned properties. That setback can also be reduced. So the visual corridor setback, you guys can't reduce that. The fall zone setback, you guys can reduce that. The separation or the setback to residentially zoned property, you guys can reduce that. And that's what the applicant is requesting this evening. As far as other properties, you know, there's been mention made that perhaps there's other properties that are suitable. You know, I'm looking at the list that was provided. Some of those are out in the county. I can't comment whether those are suitable or not. Some of these don't really contain a very good description to know exactly where they are. But when you start saying, hey, we got to be 200 feet back from the road, the property may not even meet that requirement. So what I would do is I would encourage the commission, we're focusing on one property this evening. You know, if the applicant decides to come back later with another property, we can look at that specific property. But, you know, for this evening's discussion, we're looking at the subject property that's been brought before you. So very long answer, but I hope it answered the question.
Any other questions for staff from the commission or for the applicant? Okay, so I'll bring it back to the commission for action.
I'd like to make a comment if I could. Regretfully, there are always times we'd love for everybody to always be able to be happy with a decision that's made. But unfortunately, that isn't always possible. And as much as we would like for that to be possible, there was a case in Navajo County in October of 2018, 2 years ago, where there was a cell phone tower out in Arapine. And the county supervisor's comments at that time were, I hear you and I appreciate where you're coming from. We wish everyone could get what they wanted, but sometimes they cannot. And we have to sometimes consider, the difficulty of this is in trying to balance private property rights with the public's best interest. With that in mind, I live close to that cell phone tower too. I live right off Bison Golf Course. And we do have numerous issues in that area with data and cell phone coverage and dropped calls. And I look at the volume of traffic that travels up and down that road. And as much as I would like to make it possible for Fairway Park not to be negatively impacted by this cell phone tower, I feel like, in my case at least, I have to try to look at the overriding public's best interest. I get that, but we have to look at least in my case, there's always going to be a case of not in my backyard. It's going to be a constant battle. Always has been a constant battle. So based reluctantly, I guess, in some respect, taking into account what I feel to be the overarching interest of the community in general, as much as it may be detrimental to Fairway Park, I move to approve conditional use permit 602-04-232 submitted by Sunquest Financial to allow for a 110-foot monopine cell tower located at 591 North Park Road, also known as 3980 West Cooley, that being assessor parcel number 309-52027B, subject to staff recommendation.
A motion by Commissioner Roberts. Do we have a second? Second by Vice Chair Hefner. Any further discussion on this item from the commission? All those in favor of the motion as presented, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. So the motion fails. The vote was 2-4, correct? So the motion was denied. Director Tragaskas?
So you have not approved it,
But we haven't.
but you haven't denied it yet either.
Okay.
So I just want
We need to have a new motion.
So what could happen at this point? More discussion, more question. A new motion either to approve with changing in conditions or a motion to deny. And if there is a motion to deny, then there needs to be reasons stated for that denial.
I'll just make comment. Sure. So the overlying concern is property value, health. We've looked at health issue previously. When it comes to health issues regarding cell towers, there's no conclusive evidence. That's we've heard the German case before when we did the last one that we've talked about. After the last one, I looked out into property value, and as Justin stated, there is no definitive answer that says it costs anybody any property value. And in fact, data increases do increase property value. We have a significant issue with data on mobile phones and service with mobile phones in this area. This area specifically, right here in downtown, which would impact by this tower, is practically unusable during the day when most people are out eating. And you can sit at a restaurant, any of the 2 or 3 restaurants around here, and literally you just forget about, you can get a telephone call through, but if you're trying to look up something data-wise, you're not going to get it. If they're not getting GPS signals, I'm betting that most of these people live here, so they're not using their GPS to drive around. So they probably have never had a GPS dropout or experience that way. Data is, we have to have more data. You know, you hear it constantly, broadband, broadband, broadband. We need more data. It's got to be in a place that has power and accessibility to that data. So I'm going to bet you go up on Joe Tank Road and you're going to have to drop in a power grid to get power out there to put up a tower. So there's a lot of fear and uncertainty around change. There always is. So I think it's just something that we have to comfort people through change. And you know, obviously we're not the last stop. It has to go to city council and then they're going to have to decide. But,
No,
it isn't. We're the last stop.
You are the last stop unless it's appealed.
Okay.
So with pretty much every conditional use permit, you guys are the last stop. I can think of, I think, 2 that over the course of my time here that have been appealed to the city council. So generally, this Planning and Zoning Commission is the final say on it.
I have some comments too, but I think Commissioner Roberts had some, and then Commissioner Adams.
We keep referring to Joe Tank Road and the property out that part. Isn't a lot of that federal land?
Mm-hmm.
Would we have difficulty, and it's not in our jurisdiction anyway, is that correct? But
Once you get about to the cattle guard, you're outside of the city limits.
Yeah.
I love living in a small town and we give directions by cattle guards.
And I'm not saying that that might not be a possibility. I guess at one point we were saying that maybe we needed to ask the applicant if they had looked at any of these other locations that were presented by Mr. Lauer to see if any of those would be possible or advantageous. There was also the issue brought up of what the cost would be to place the tower on this lot versus the location at another lot. Would it be more beneficial to have the tower located on another lot that's up higher, but we noticed that it was several miles away? So the question there becomes, because of the distance from where we're looking at, does that affect the effectiveness of that tower if it's built? So these are all questions I guess we need to ask you as the applicant, if any of these properties have been looked at.
Just 1 second, please. We'll ask the applicant to come back up, but I want to get questions and comments from the commission first. Commissioner Adams.
My concern isn't the health and it's not the property value. That's not it. My concern is the 200. And that's what the city set up. And that's what I feel we should honor. And that's pretty close to a house. That's my concern.
And those are my exact concerns too. So I don't have concerns about health issues. I don't have concerns about the visual corridor because it looks like it's going to be a good looking tower. I don't have concerns about property values in that sense either. But my concern is we do have the setbacks in place. And until we knew definitively that there weren't other locations that a tower could go into that would not require us to change the setbacks, I'd want to see that first before making any changes to the setback. Commissioner Wilson.
And I just wanted to say, I also have the same concerns with the 200 and what our code says, but also the fact that that tower could in effect be extended in the future. It's already 110 feet. And then they could come back and ask and get an extension on it, and that brings it that much higher over and above those trees.
We would have to do that.
Well, that's true, but I won't be on this.
Yeah, well, I gotta believe, nope.
I'll be on city council, not
Commissioner
this
Josh Adams.
Yeah, just a comment. Again, my main issue is the 200 as well. And I understand that we have the authority to kind of override that, but I guess I'm uncomfortable with that, setting that precedence for something that I feel, even though it would be good, I don't feel like it would bring enough good to override a city code. And that's again where my concern is. I feel like we have a city code for a reason and we should follow it.
Vice Chair Hefner.
The only reason I'm okay with it, the fault is that it's 110 foot. Okay, they want 125%. Okay, as that. Now the 200 was the arbitrary set for residential. The homes aren't on the property line. They're not, and you've also got 80-foot trees there that if something's going to fall, they're closer to them, they're going to fall on them anyways. So you got a fall break with the trees. They're in a sticky wicket because literally we need more, and then we've got to put it somewhere. We've got certain restrictions, so it's just looking at I guess for lack of a better term, the lesser of two evils. Where do we go with this? Is it really going to fall in somebody's home? And I'm comfortable believing it will not fall on a home.
Commissioner Roberts.
The fall zone is 125% of the height of the tower.
Right.
If it was a 100-foot tower, we'd be within that fall zone.
Right.
Because it's 110 feet, we fall about 12 feet out of that fall zone. I guess from my perspective, I'm not sure that that's a significant number enough. I understand the 200-foot setback, and we're talking 75 feet on that. That is a significant number for the 75 feet. Again, it comes down to a balancing of private property rights versus the benefit of the community as a whole.
Are there any questions we could ask the applicant that might change anything here?
It would be nice if we could find out whether they have done studies on some of these other addresses to see if they would be suitable.
Would you like to ask the applicant that question? You could please come forward again, and Commissioner Roberts has a question for you.
Is there any way we can put up a map that would kind of go over that area of the 260 a little bit?
I will just start at slide number 1. You let me know if it's the one you want.
You can go back out just a little bit.
That one?
Yes. So we looked at properties in here because we thought this might work out better because of its proximity to residential. We looked at all of the commercial along here, and as you can see here, there's no way for us to meet any setback. These properties in here did not meet setback because of the residential. This one met the 200-foot setback, but just fell short, again, like this property did. But when I met with the RF engineer regarding this property, it did not serve to all these homes in here. It fell short up just north of the Mogollon Drive. So in bringing it up, even that small amount, it helped to service that area a little bit better. We did go further south and look into the Buffalo Bill area, but it was too far south. As we talked before, the RF engineer said, once you go too far south or too far one way or the other, it takes away from what this tower is supposed to do, which is fill in that service along 260 and offload those surrounding towers. So we did look at several properties, I would say 13 in total that I looked at, all commercial. I must have called Justin 100 times, asking him questions about how can we work around this. I asked about anything from a water tank to a pine tree to, you know, whatever it took to try to fit it in to the area. And this is what we tried to do, was make it match the trees surrounding it. We tried to cluster it in with the trees and still meet that 200-foot setback that we absolutely cannot break. We spent a lot of time talking with the RF engineers about how far out can we go, and really even a quarter mile was too much. It affects the service too much by moving it one or the other. If we move it down further south, we end up needing another tower further north. So the idea by putting it here is to fill in the gaps with as minimal number of towers in the area as possible.
So to clarify this a little bit, and this might help me actually. So you work for a company called Young Design Corp. So your company does not actually own the property in question. That's owned by another organization.
Sunquest Financial, yes.
And you are working with Verizon, who's probably your client, to develop a tower for them to use. So it's not your property that you're trying to get a tower on. You're trying to locate a location and build a tower for your customer. And in doing so, one of your responsibilities is to find a place that would work for your customer and a property that's also available to make that happen. So you don't have a vested interest in that particular parcel. You're just trying to find a tower location for your client. Is that correct?
That not only services Verizon, but services the community, if that makes sense. I mean, Verizon's only as good as their service to the community.
So you have looked at multiple properties then?
Yes.
And then I have one more.
Yes.
The reason that we have to upgrade these towers is because of the increased demand for data and for 5G. Is that correct?
This particular tower is not working on the 5G. This particular tower is in the 4G range, that they're just trying to get the data in here that's necessary. Not being a major metropolitan area, the data speeds don't need to be as great as Phoenix or Tucson or the larger cities that have thousands and thousands of people. So I hope that helped answer the question.
Because the 110-foot becomes kind of a critical point for some of the decisions on to approve or deny.
Right. And in talking with the RF engineer, if even though to give the best service is 110 feet, if we came down to the 100 feet, he could make it work. It's just not going to extend as far. So
And you'd have to cut trees, right?
maybe not right now, but as they grow, yes, we'd have to trim them.
So, Mr. Chair,
And if I may, to answer the question about what we'd have to do with the ground, the idea is that these are built with what's called a caisson. So it's a cylindrical concrete pylon, more or less, that goes 30, 40 feet in the ground, depending on the structural requirement. This one would likely be 40 feet into the ground. And then the equipment itself would be put, and the tree, within a fence line. I know they talked about the safety of the children. Right now, we're proposing an 8-foot fence. If it took a 10-foot fence to make everybody feel better about that safety, then they would certainly do that.
Richard Graskis.
So, I mean, if we had to put a stipulation on the tower that they couldn't in the future increase the height, again, it just means maybe down in the future we'd have to add another tower somewhere else, but it would then service the needs of the people living right there. And that also is Verizon's concern. It's not just about putting a tree on a lot. It's about servicing the community and the customer.
Thank you.
perhaps a review of the purpose of the wireless telecommunication tower and antenna code section. You'll see in section 15169A, entitled Purpose, says the purpose of this ordinance is to establish general guidelines for the siting of wireless communication towers and antennas. The goals of this ordinance are two, and it lists 8 goals on that ordinance. If you remember when it talks about reduction in setbacks, it'll say, but may be reduced by the commission if the goals of this ordinance would be better served thereby. These are the goals that that sentence refers to. So number 1 is to protect residential areas and land uses from potential adverse impacts of towers and antennas. Number 2 is to encourage the location of towers in non-residential areas. Number 3 is to minimize the total number of towers throughout the community. Number 4 is to strongly encourage the joint use of new and existing tower sites as a primary option, rather than construction of additional single-use towers. Number 5 is to encourage users of towers and antennas to configure them in a way that minimizes the adverse visual impact of towers and antennas through careful design, siting, landscape screening, and innovative camouflaging techniques. Number 6 is consider the public health and safety of communication towers. Number 7 is to avoid potential damage to adjacent properties from tower failure through engineering and careful siting of tower structures. And number 8 is to protect airport approach corridors. So those are the 8 criteria that you guys look at when you say, yeah, we're going to approve this, or we're not going to approve it. Are we going to give it a reduction in setbacks, or are we not going to give it a reduction in setback? These are the 8 things that you look at for that standard. So we had not really gone through these specifically or individually, and it may be useful at this point for the conversation that the commission is having, whether to approve or deny.
This property does seem to fit into a lot of those categories, is what I've kind of heard, and as you kind of stated those to the commission. And Commissioner Josh Adams.
Question for the staff, if I might. Do we have any, and I apologize if this is a difficult question, do we have any situations where we have approved a cell phone tower within greater than, or excuse me, less than 124 feet from a residence? Anything along those lines? Do we have any precedents for that up to this point?
So most recently, the commission approved a tower for Cellular One on White Mountain Road. That was a similar situation in that it was a very shallow piece of property. They pushed the tower as far to the rear as they could, which meant that they did not meet the adjacent setbacks for the 200 feet. In that case, because of the topography, there's a very extreme hillside that was located directly behind that property. The commission determined that the goals of the ordinance would be met by allowing them to move it further back, even though it did not meet the 200 feet. But that was specifically because of the topography of the adjacent property, and not because of any other reason on that.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, do you know what the distance was from that tower to a residence? Off the top of your head, or ballpark it?
The nearest residence was several hundred feet away. I don't remember specifically, but that was, that's a ballpark.
But on that particular tower, the existing resident was several hundred feet away, but there were residential lots behind it that were closer. Is that correct?
There was a vacant residential piece of property, was not subdivided into lots. And we had not received any opposition from that property owner indicating concern with the tower being located that close to their property.
And that was right up to the property line, right?
Almost. It was
So
very close.
Feet.
It was close.
But that one also had an existing tower
But that was
on the
the-
property too, correct?
They were proposing to replace a flagpole that had been utilized as an antenna with a new tower. And the commission imposed some pretty significant requirements as far as camouflaging and things like that on that property.
Commissioner John Adams, do you have a question or a comment?
No, the only comment I have is just the 200 feet. I mean, I know we did that with Cell One, and the hill was the thing that kind of hid that, and I felt that was the reason why there, but just 200 feet, and that's just kind of a sticking point for me.
And I've softened up a little bit because it sounds like they've looked at other properties and it does sound like this might be one of the only places that it could be put in. So from my point of view, I can see why we would maybe want to change the setbacks for this particular case after what I've learned. Commissioner Wilson?
Can I just say, there's a map that shows houses. It's not this one, it's more closer up. But there is like, yes, that one right there. So 521, where it says R1-7, that, and 541, you look right out their back windows. That tower is like right there. Well, actually, I don't know what the red box is. That's not where the tower is
That's not where the
located.
tower's going. The tower is actually closer to where it says C2.
C2.
So right up in here.
But that-
There's actually trees that would block the view of this tower from them in between.
And that's 124 feet from the property lines, not from the buildings.
124.7, yeah.
From 451 or 541.
Yes.
Right.
From
So it would be
541.
more,
It's
it would be
more,
more toward,
yeah.
you get more distance. Do we have any idea what that distance is?
Right.
541 is the property that I would make the consideration upon, because that's the one, if it was going to fall that way, is the one that's going to hit. And actually 650 is, it would fall onto that. If it fell that way, it would fall onto that property.
It wouldn't though because of the distance.
Because of the distance?
Yeah.
Okay. But it would fall into the property, but not the building. That's a, yeah. Is it 98? 98?
No,
It said
no.
it was 98.2.
Commissioner Roberts?
No, the 98 feet is to the property to the north.
Yeah.
The, this distance between here and 541 is the 124.7.
Right. You might hit the trash heap or the trash bin if you, maybe.
The Dollar General.
Maybe.
But I walked that property the other day just to try to get an idea of what the visual impact would be, especially the house that's existing there on number 521. There is a corridor of trees there all along that walkway, but they're in that walkway where you see where the utility easement is. There is a fairly wide area. A lot of people do walk. I noticed a lot of people walking their dogs, walking through there in that area. But the visual impact from those residences was blocked somewhat quite a bit by those trees that are between, on the backside of those residences, between there and where the cell phone tower would be located. Plus, my understanding is that cell phone tower would be sort of in the middle or close to the middle of that cluster of taller trees.
Correct.
Is that correct?
And that was the goal, is to hide it as much as possible from view.
That's all I had to say.
We have a motion. Any further discussion?
I'm willing to renew my motion again, because I believe it's the right thing to do. I mean,
Commissioner Wilson,
There's someone with their stuff, I don't know.
do we want to hear from the public? And we had a session for the public to address the commission. Do we want to hear further public comment?
I'm fine with that.
Could you please come forward again?
Yes, and thank you again. I'd just like to simplify. I think the decision is between humanity and industry. And I think that we need to make our decision based upon first principles. And ethically, we would be making our decision based upon the golden rule. And I would like to think if you were Mrs. Cash and you lived in her home, within that 200 feet, would your decision be different? And I believe that as a council, that for this community, that we're going to make the right decision for humanity versus industry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for taking another comment. I have a relative that bought some property in the Heber area for a cell phone tower. Evidently, these people don't own the property, they lease the property. And the revenue is handsome. And we've talked about Joe Tank Road before, over the cattle guards. I know exactly where that's at. I walk there. It's either federal or state land. And I'm just wondering where the applicant, and I don't mind, I don't have any problem now with phone reception or drop calls, and I live in Fairway Park. And I'd be open to get better coverage too. And I've also known people in the past, and they do it now, federal and state land is leased so cheaply. And I just wonder if the applicant has checked that avenue. I don't think it would be hard if they lease for a pittance per acre. These ranchers lease thousands of an acre for their cows to graze. And I'm just wondering if it's that easy, if they could approach state or federal to get an acre of ground to put a tower on, because the power's close. My brother lives, I mean, he has property that's right, borders that cattle guard. So I know exactly where it's at. So there's power available there. And the trees would mix in with the trees that's there already. And the only people that's going to look at it besides hikers would be deer and antelope, coyote, and I don't think you're going to have anybody in here complaining. And I'm just wondering if this was put in Bison, Show Low Country Club, Torion, if they would have any more clout than us people that don't drive Cadillacs, that might drive a Nova, might not have as much clout in arguing the point. And it's in our backyard. It's not in you guys' backyard. How would you like to have this in your backyard? I think that if they would check with the federal or state land, it probably would be given to them for a lot less than what they're going to be paying, unless it's changed. These people won't own that property. They're going to lease. They're going to pay a monthly lease. and it's pretty good. If I owned the property, I'd be here saying, hey, maybe I'll look at it differently. I don't think it'd take anything to run power there. And I don't think they're going to need sewer or water or anything. Probably power is the only thing, and it doesn't cost that. And you won't have any blowback from people like us. So that's just my comment. I would like to see them approach state or federal land. They give it to farmers. Why wouldn't they almost give it to a cell tower? Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Adams.
I'm sorry, just making sure that I'm clear here on everything. And so in this piece of property, is there anywhere else this tower could go in this piece of property that would work any better?
Based on the information that we've received, and we've done a few calculations on it, you got to meet the 200-foot visual corridor setback. This is pushed up right to the 200-foot visual corridor setback. There is no way to meet the visual corridor and meet the 200-foot from residential property and meet the fall zone requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I just gotta say, if it was as simple as just putting it somewhere else, I think they'd certainly do it because it'd be easier. And if the path was that easy, I think they would have done that.
Have they? What he's asked? That?
I'd like to ask the applicant to come forward and address that point, please, for us.
It's not as simple as just finding federal or state land that maybe looks good. It's about location and offloading towers and service, and there's a lot more technical information that I know that we sent a backup justification from the RF engineer to Justin because he tried to ask all these questions up front because he wanted to be able to know that what we were presenting made sense. And if I may, I'll pull that out. It says Verizon Wireless is aware that there are concerns about the 110-foot height of the proposed tower. In order for the tree to look natural, the antenna center line cannot be within the top 10 feet of the structure. Verizon has reviewed the site designs, and isolation studies have been performed to determine not only the appropriate height of the antennas on the above names or on this site, but they've also run these studies on all of the candidates that were put out there. Like I said, there were 13 different properties we looked at, and this one met the majority of the space needed, whereas most of them did not. We would have been in the same situation he was talking about on the other site where we're 5 feet away from a property line, which doesn't even come close to meeting those setbacks. So the main reason he needed the 100-foot center line is the height of the surrounding trees as well as the adjacent properties and the elevation changes in the surrounding properties having a profound effect on the efficiency of the signal and overall coverage. They need the center line of the antennas to be greater than 20 foot higher than the neighboring trees to provide the coverage and capacity to meet the needs within the area according to the complaints and the studies that they did. Without that clearance, the blockage of surrounding trees would create the problems for the RF signal's propagation, creating coverage gaps and holes that degrade the site performance, thus requiring additional trees in the future or additional sites. So the idea was really to try to meet all the needs, not only of the community, the neighbors, the visual effects, but also to minimize the number of towers, which is always the goal.
And those are some of the goals in city code as well.
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna throw this out there as a feeler and see if where we're at. I move to approve CUP 602-04-232 submitted by SunQuest Financial LLC to allow for a 110-foot monopine cell tower located at 591 North Clark Road, 3980 West Cooley, that being APN 309-52-027B, subject to staff recommendation. Second by I think the vice chair had me on that one a little bit.
Okay.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Now we're split. That's kind of what I thought we were going to be. So we went from 2-4, and now I know you want us to have a motion that's approved, but we're kind of at a point where we're split. So
I'm going to look to our attorney. He's been sitting there real comfortable in that chair all night,
Lock us
smiling
up for
behind
the
his
night
face
and-
mask. So I'll defer to Mr. Brown.
So, Commission, when you have a tie vote, that means the motion failed. So you can either continue to debate and come back with a further motion, or if it's gonna be a 3-3 split, then this means it fails. Do you have any questions?
We don't have to have an approved.
But then it's
approval
neither
motion
approved nor
denied.
denied.
Yeah, if it does, either one doesn't pass, the thing just fails. It just fails for lack of a majority vote.
Can we continue the motion to a later date? Can we continue the application to a later date?
You could bring it back at a later date.
But we would have to do something about it at the next meeting. We can't continue it more than one meeting. Is that correct?
I mean, you're 6 of you here tonight, so theoretically, if you had a 7th, the next one.
It could make the difference. Is it still the 200?
Yeah, that's still my concern. It's the residents and how back they are.
It is the 200, and I am understanding more, and I appreciate what they're trying to do, and I am understanding more what you're saying. I get it, and I just, man, it's 200. I mean, we had that there, and what if we do this every time? Every time we have a cell phone tower, we make an exception. I mean, it just this.
And I don't like changing the 200 feet either, but it sounds like they've tried other properties and this is the location they've got to work with. We're not in a big area. We've got limited, I mean, this is kind of like with medical marijuana. We're kind of constrained sometimes by where we can put things. And if they've gone through and, they don't own the property, so they don't have a vested interest, they're trying to find a location. So for me, when they said, this is the location, we don't have any other locations to go, that's why I thought, well, maybe we do need to make an exception to it, because otherwise, what are we going to do? Are we just going to not have the cell phone coverage? Are we not going to be able to keep up with the capacity? And, a lot of people only have cell phones, so that could be a public safety sort of thing as far as being able to call out, or an economic issue as well as far as having good coverage up here, a variety of things. So that's where I was coming from when I changed my stance.
We've had a dropout by the theater. I think everybody that has Verizon knows that. Right by the theater, you go through there, you get a dropout. That's now extended up the hill. But the data used to be just bad there, and the cell was okay. The cell went away, the data's gone, and that's now expanding, like I said, down into this downtown. That creep comes from people using data. So there's previously, when they set the 200 setback, it might have been based upon, well, we can do this because we're only going to need so many cell towers. We're going to have to get more. We're going to have more of these future. They're not going to be less. So we got to look at them in a case by case. And the concern is literally the tower falling on something. Okay. So can we address, is there a way for us to address to know that the tower, won't fall on something? Is a taller fence help with that? Does some other things that can be done? Can that be done? to make it so that it's the safety concern for the distance is a safety concern. I mean, that's gotta be what it is. So can we address that in a different way?
Yeah, the reason for the two separate setbacks, because they are separate and distinct. One is a safety concern. The 125% is specifically 100% tied to safety issues. The 200-foot from a residential zone, that is separate and distinct from the fall zone setback. And that really is, it's meant to be the same thing as what we got along the road as a buffer zone, a setback, so that people don't have these, necessarily right up against their fence or right up against their.
And this is a commercial property.
The property that they are proposing is commercial,
So
yes.
somebody could come in there, build a building and put it how many feet from?
On a commercial structure, let me look it up real quick so I give you the actual real number.
Okay.
Think about that.
50 feet.
So on a C2 zone, which is what this is located in, rear yard setback, where you adjoin a lot in a residential zone, there's a minimum of 20 foot or the height of the building, whichever is greater.
Okay.
So in a commercial zone, we allow by right as a permitted use, you can go up to 45 foot tall.
Yep.
So if they were to build a 45-foot tall building on this property, they'd have to be 45 feet from the property line.
And they'd have to put a fence along the back, right?
The fence is already there.
Okay.
These properties that are residential, they were originally commercially zoned properties. And the owner at the time, this is going back 15 years or so, said, the better use for them is to rezone them to residential. And so the requirement was that the residential would have to build the fence rather than the commercial, because the residential was a new use on that property.
The master plan was commercial from the original.
The original development of that, it was all a commercial piece of property. The owner of the property at the time came back and said, no, we would like these 4 lots to be, actually there was more because they went along the cul-de-sac there. They felt that the better use for those properties was residential versus commercial, and so they requested a zone change on it.
Is that when they filled in the pond?
No, I think the pond was filled in quite a few years before that.
Well, I don't know if we're any different than where we were on a 3-3 split. So we can take this to another meeting.
We moved to
bring it
table.
back.
That's for the question. There's a motion to table.
The applicant, okay, so we have the applicant and we have a member of the public who'd like to address
Mr.
this.
Chair, do you have a motion on the table right now, or?
I don't think we do.
I was, okay.
Were you gonna?
I was gonna motion to table.
Okay. Sorry.
Can we do that?
So on a conditional use permit, you can motion to continue one time for up to 30 days. So if you do make that motion to continue, you would need to set it for a date specific, which would be, I would, contemplate one of your regularly scheduled meetings within the next 30 days. At that meeting, you would be required to make a decision. You could not continue it beyond that 30-day period.
We want to bring the applicant up. She has a comment.
Yeah,
or
we'll do that.
would you please come forward?
It's more of a question for the council. The question is this: with the fall zone concerns that you have, if the RF engineer can make it work 10 foot shorter, that meets your fall zone concerns all the way around, would that be something the council would consider? Would it service as well? Maybe not as well, but it would still service the area enough for.
That would put you within the fall zone at 124 feet.
And we could make it if the stipulation needed to be non-extendable.
That might help some of the members because we wouldn't be having to change the setback.
Makes me feel a little better.
That's the visual corridor, sir. You address that, please.
So there are two, again, there's three different setbacks that we're dealing with here. One is the visual corridor, which is set at 200 feet from any major arterial. So Clark Road qualifies as one of those roads. So they are proposing to be 200 feet away from that property line. So they would meet that. The second is the fall zone setback. Now, the first setback, the commission cannot reduce. There is no authority in the code for you guys to reduce a setback from a visual corridor. The second setback is the fall zone, which is normally 125% of the height. So again, going to the example of a 100-foot tall tower, your fall zone would be 125 feet. The commission does have the authority to reduce that setback if you feel the goals of the ordinance are better achieved. That was those 8 bullet points that I read to you. The third setback is the 200-foot setback from residentially zoned property. That one can also be reduced by the commission if the commission feels that the goals of the ordinance are better met. So the first one, the first 200 foot from the road, you guys can't touch.
Can't do that.
The fall zone, you guys can reduce that. The setback from residentially zoned areas, you guys can reduce that. But again, it falls back on those 8 criteria. If you feel that those 8 criteria are better met by reducing those setbacks from adjacent properties for fall zone or adjacent property for residential, then you can reduce those. If you don't feel that the goals of the ordinance would be better met, again, those 8 items, then you probably shouldn't reduce the setback. And then this property would not be viable for this project. I think that's essentially where you guys are at this point.
Let me ask you a question. What's the setback from the tower from Cooley Road? As far as that?
200 feet. That's the visual corridor setback.
No, Cooley's the other one.
Oh, from Cooley.
It was more, it was 158.
158 feet.
That doesn't fall within the 200 you're talking.
No, it's not residential.
No, it's not residential.
So the 200 foot from a visual corridor, that's from an arterial street, that's from a major highway. That's not from just a neighborhood type street.
Have we given you an answer on that question?
No, but it's out there to at least consider, as Verizon would be willing to make that.
Change the tower height. Okay.
Would that be a condition of the approval, or would that be a resubmittal?
It would become a condition of approval as stipulated by the applicant. Maximum tower height would be whatever stipulated. They've also stipulated that they would not increase the height. Again, a condition of approval is something that 10 years from now, they could still come back to you guys and say, yeah, that's a condition of approval, but times have changed.
Yep.
And now we'd like to request something different than what we originally got approved for. That's always a possibility. That's why we have this process, is so that, as conditions change, we notify the neighbors and we're back having the same meeting again. So
But they would have to come back through the whole process again.
they would, yes.
Or we could stipulate something, or ask them to stipulate something tonight. Okay, I think we're thinking about it, and sir, would you please come forward?
Thank you. I'd just like to say that this isn't the only option. There are less ideal options that don't negatively impact human beings as much, meaning, and I'd just like to remind the committee that we have suggested Chamberlain Way and Highway 260. It's commercial, it's zoned commercial, for sale by owner at 928-242-2806. Her name is Lisa, have we called her. Also, there's a commercial property at 1015 Burton Road in Sholo for 249,000, zoned commercial, MLS ID 225953 on Highway 260 in Burton. Now, given this may be less ideal industrially, however, it doesn't have the complication of affecting human beings. So why shouldn't we consider that yes, it may be less ideal in terms of coverage, cell phone coverage, but it doesn't necessarily equate to affecting human beings in their community, which I believe is the 8 stipulations of this commission, is to protect the community more than it is to promote industry. That's the reason why you're here, is to consider the communities. In fact, if we would read the 8 again, it seems like the preponderance of the goal of the committee is to protect the community when we read the 8 stipulations or requirements of the committee. So I'd like to remind the committee that we also have Highway 260 Meadow Lane in Linden, which isn't very far from Fairway Park. 230997 MLS ID is 1 acre zoned commercial. Has the committee considered this property? It's not very far from Fairway Park, and there are numerous others that I have researched and provided, and I just would hate that we do not consider this tonight when we have presented the opportunity for the committee to consider a less ideal. Yes, it's not directly right in the ideal zone for better coverage, but it might be just a little bit further down the road. Thank you.
And I just want to clarify, we're not considering other properties. We have to consider this property
Yes.
since it's part of the application. That's why we asked the applicant if they had explored other properties. But that's the one we have to focus in on tonight.
Right, and I believe that we have shown that we have not met the standard in the code for this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Roberts?
Mr. Lowry, I would like for you to know that your concerns for everybody here are not falling on deaf ears. We understand that if it was in our backyard, we might feel a little bit differently. You're not that far from my backyard. I'm right across the road from you. So I don't consider you a lesser area than our neighborhood or Torion or anything like that. You're still humans, and you're still people, and you're still impacted. You've been in your homes for a long, long time. I still feel like, as a commission, we have to look at the code and those 8 bullet points. And I believe that when we look over those 8 bullet points, we might have a little bit different perception on it than maybe you guys do, because you're closer to where it's going to be. But our overall goal is not to pick on any one group, but to try to do what's best for the community as a whole. And unfortunately, sometimes the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And we have to take a look at, everything. And we have to trust that the applicant has worked with planning and zoning staff to try to find a suitable lot. And apparently they've done that. They looked at numerous properties and had numerous conversations with planning and zoning staff. And the only solution that they could come up with is this particular lot. And this is the lot that we have to look at, not any other lot.
So just to kind of look and see where we're at tonight. Again, I think, we've had 2 votes. The first one failed. The second one was a tiebreaker. We're a commission tonight of 6, which is always a difficult spot to be in. That's why we have 7 members on this group. We have a couple of things we can do tonight. We can bring this back at another meeting. We can take no action on it. We can, ask the applicant to make a stipulation on something, but I don't know if we're getting anywhere on this tonight, is where I think we're at. We're 2 hours in, and I don't know if there's any movement on making a decision that the commission's wanting to do. Commissioner Adams.
I am lowering it helps me a little at the fall and everything. So I can see the need. I know what we're up against. I really don't wish there was another spot. I really do. I really, really do. But I don't know. I mean, it's a commercial piece of property. They could put a building there and it could be right in their backyard and be more of an eyesore than maybe that tower, depending on the building they did. But I definitely would probably have to have it come down a little bit, the 10 feet.
Make one more. Commissioner Roberts, I'm sorry to disagree with you. Everyone here, other than here, is against this. The majority of people, not one person has stood up and said, yeah, we want this. Not one person. So how you can say this is for the best, for the majority, I don't know how that comes out, because no one's here to back you up. It's just an opinion that you have. And you've got all these people that showed up here tonight that has a vested interest to say, no, we don't want this.
And I get that. I really do.
You say that, and it's not in your backyard, but that doesn't ring with us. It doesn't ring with us at all. And I know everybody's got an opinion. I just disagree with yours because there's nobody here to back you up other than Commissioner Hepner. Did I pronounce that right?
Mm-mm.
No, I'm sorry.
Like F, phonics.
It's what?
Phonics.
Phonics, that's your name?
Hefner.
Hefner. And so, and maybe Commissioner Bishop now, I don't know. But 3 versus, I don't know how many we got here, 2 dozen?
And we're in a different situation than you are, and I agree. You're in this neighborhood, you don't want a cell phone tower there, but we're looking at city code, we're looking at the fact that there is a landowner who wants to develop, we're looking at the community as a whole. There's 11,000 people plus visitors, and no 11,000 people aren't going to show up to say we want the Verizon tower, but I think it's more reasonable to say that people living in that neighborhood would show up and say they don't want it. I get it.
Okay, I do too.
So
I do have a
we
question.
understand that.
Have you looked at anything in the federal or state or even the Joe Tank Road area or anything like that?
I think she's addressed that question.
And sir,
Because I didn't hear anything about
sir, just to understand, in my position, one of the things they do is the Chamber of Commerce. People walk in there daily. And if you want to volunteer to sit there to experience it, you can yourself and complain about the cellular coverage and complain about dropouts and complain about slow data. And it's daily. And our area basically lives and thrives on tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these are locals that come in and complain, and these are tourists that come in and complain. And one of our best things that we do there is we try to help people with maps because their GPS doesn't work.
Well, when we first moved up here 3 years ago, our cell phones didn't work at all because it was, if you didn't have Verizon, you don't have anything. And they're putting Verizon back in, right? For Verizon. So where we live in Fairway Park, again, we don't have it. When we first moved here, I used GPS all the time because I was new and didn't know where anything was. So I'd put it in my phone and follow it. So yes, there's a lot more people coming up in here and they're moving here every day. I understand that. I get it. But again, I feel like, as Keith said, that there's more places, even though the 13 she looked at, there's got to be something with less controversy. I mean, we spent, 2 hours here plus?
Yeah.
With less controversy. That could be done. And I would like for somebody to make a motion to deny the contract, the application. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Adams, did you have a question or comment?
I have a comment, and I've gone round and around with this, but my thoughts keep going back to situations like the Roachesky fire, and I remember that was all going on, and trying to get hold of family members, and phones were down, and it was awful. And as much as I don't like this location, we do have an issue, and we have anything like that happen again, I hope this would, if we do it, this may be something that may change some of that.
So 100 feet?
I just wanted to make a comment. If you deny the cell tower, the service needs to be here. Big business is going to find another place for it. It's not going to not happen if you deny it. They will find.
Let's just do 30 days. Let's do 30 days and wait.
And wait a little bit.
Yeah.
I think I think there's some sentiments here to maybe wait 30 days on this, but.
Is the second meeting within 30 days? Or we have to do it the next meeting?
September's odd because we have 5 Tuesdays.
Right.
The second meeting in October would be October 27th, which would be outside of the 30 days.
We have to do it the next meeting.
We could continue it to the second Tuesday in October, which would be October 13th. That would be 3 weeks from tonight.
So I'll make a motion to, what are we doing? It's not table, it's
Continuance?
Continue.
to continue this agenda item to the next regular meeting,
Which would be October 13th.
October 13th.
Second. Second by Commissioner Josh Adams, and you had the motion by Vice Chair Hefner. Any discussion? All those in favor of continuing this until October 13th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that is unanimous, 6-0. So we will have this on our agenda for October 13th. I appreciate everybody's patience with us and each other tonight. I know it's tough, and I hope you understand that maybe there's been some different views here, but the commission did hear your concerns. We are taking it into consideration, and we should have an actual decision at the next meeting when we have an odd number of commissioners here. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being involved in the community and for doing what you feel is right for your neighborhood.
I've gone to a lot of school board meetings. And once a motion's passed, just keep passing motions until you get your. I mean, you denied the first time, and then you had to redo it again, and then you had 3, 4, and 3 against. Then you just keep voting until you get your way.
Not denied.
I mean, I thought if you
Ma'am, it
passed
was
it
not
once.
denied the first to approve. So it wasn't.
Okay,
So
as
then it
long as
became a
it's-
tied vote. Doesn't pass. They get 7 commissioners here,
Right.
then you'll have it.
It's just my misunderstanding. Didn't prove it. I'm sitting here doing it again.
And it-
Until they get their way. Is that?
And it can be,
My.
yeah, and it could be some confusion too, in the sense that it was a motion to approve it, which, or was it a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Which failed, but that doesn't mean then.
It's denied.
Yeah, correct. It doesn't mean it's denied, it just wasn't approved. Right. Yeah.
I've never seen this happen.
It was a little different night.
For an answer.
Sure.
I won't be able to be here for the next meeting. I have to put on mail. But if they put this tower in, can they put another tower in there also? It would be.
You wouldn't put 2 towers in the same place in the first place. It wouldn't work.
Right, and as indicated by the applicant, this tower is being designed to have more than one.
Well, it'll have more. Yeah, the tower's designed to put more antennas on it, but not another tower.
Thank you, everybody. Moving on to our next item, which just happens to be call the public. Is there any member here from the public that would like to address the commission on any items that we have not discussed tonight? Seeing none, I'll dispense with reading the boilerplate, and that takes us to our next item, which is item 8, approval of the minutes from the last meeting that we held, which was on August 25th.
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that takes us to item 9. It is 2020, so. Summary of current events from our commission members. We'll start with Commissioner Josh Adams.
Just like to thank staff and my fellow commissioners for being here tonight. I know sometimes it's tough, but I appreciate you and respect you. Thank you.
Commissioner Roberts.
I just wanted to bring up the fact that we're not out of the COVID crisis yet. So it's important that we try to encourage people to do the social distancing and be careful in every way that they can so we don't have a resurgence of the type that we had back in March, or that we had back in July.
Thank you. Commissioner John Adams.
I just, I think it's exciting that we can get together as a community and discuss things. We may not agree, but it's nice that we can sit and talk and have these discussions, and it's great that the community's involved. And I appreciate everyone on this commission, and we're able to have the conversations and talking about how to improve our community. That's, what is best for Show Low. Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
I have 2 things. One is I want to thank the public for getting involved in issues. It would be nice if we saw more public come in to our meetings and get involved in some of these issues and voice their opinions. Secondly, City of Show Low trash recycle pickup days. Some of them are changing, and they will change by October 5th. So the City of Show Low on their website has this fantastic little map with the highlighted different colors for the trash days. And if you're not sure if yours is changing, you can go on the City of Show Low website and you can check it out and make sure so you don't miss that trash day.
Thank you.
I'll just say thanks to everyone. It's, tough conversations, but it's nice to see it's done civilly and respectfully. That's really appreciated.
And I share the same sentiments. Thank you to all of you for coming in and having civil conversation, and to members of the public as well. Director Triascus.
Shameless plug for the census. My2020census.gov. Very simple. Just type it in. If you have a code, if you don't have a code, we've had people say, well, I never got anything in the mail. That's okay. You can still go to the website, enter in your address, and off you go. As of right now, the deadline to respond is September 30th. So we're getting down to the wire. And if you're looking for a way to benefit your community for a long time, we had the question tonight: what's the population? The more accurate the population, the more accurate the answers. So certainly encourage everybody to do that. With that, Mr. Chair, that's probably enough. So thanks.
Thank you. And we have no further business tonight, so we are adjourned. Thank you.